Let's practice writing the null and alternative hypotheses for some scenarios where we're doing a two-sample test. So in our first case, we have the average amount of money spent on gasoline for vehicles is thought to be the same between men and women. A study is conducted to determine if there is a difference in the mean amount of money spent on gasoline. The sample means come out as $72.75 for men and $67.34 for women. Okay, so all we want to do is write the null and the alternate hypothesis here. The first thing that I will always search for is, again, that alternate hypothesis. What are we trying to conclude? What are we trying to determine? So I see that in the second sentence, the study is conducted to determine if there is a difference. That is the key word here, in these mean amounts of money. When I go to write these, I typically write H sub naught and H sub A down, and then I fill in the H sub A first and work my way back up to the H sub naught. So it looks like we are doing a two-sided or a two-tailed test here where we're saying, is the mu of men not equal to the mu of women? The average amount spent for gasoline for men, is that different or not equal to the average amount spent for women? And I like to use subscripts that make sense, that somehow denote the words in my problem. You can always use 1 and 2, but that is just generic. And at the end, you may have forgotten what 1 and 2 stand for. So I just like to write in some kind of a subscript that makes sense to me. So if we're doing the two-sample test, the not equal to, that means that our null would be assuming that they are equal to each other, that the mean amount of money spent here is equal to each other, and then we're trying to show that it is not, that these means are different. Notice that the sample means, the x bars, so this would be like x bar sub m and x bar sub w. Notice that that's given information, but it's not actually used at all in the hypotheses. So whenever you're actually running these tests and when you're deciding on your hypotheses, you may have extraneous information out there. Whenever you're doing a two-sample test, you're always just comparing the two population means to each other. There's never an actual numerical value in them, in your H sub naught and your H sub A. Just for practice and just to see it, remember that these could also be written in that other notation where we subtract the right hand over. So H sub naught could say mu sub m minus mu sub w equals 0. And the alternative could say mu sub m minus mu sub w not equal to 0. So just be comfortable with either way that those might be presented. These are always the ways that I like to write them, but you may see them differently. Okay, in our second scenario, it says the mean useful lifetime of two different brands of batteries are to be compared. 100 of the exact same flashlights are randomly assigned to use battery A or battery B, and then they are left on until the battery dies. The researcher specifically wants to determine if battery A has a shorter mean life than battery B. So in that very last sentence, I get the hint of how my alternate hypothesis is going to play out. It looks like we have specific direction. We have a shorter direction. So it looks like our alternate is going to be a less than symbol. So again, I'm going to write out H sub naught and H sub A. I'm going to start with H sub A. It looks like we are comparing the mean life of battery A, so I'm going to use mu sub A, to the mean life of battery B, so I will use mu sub B. And specifically here, they are looking to try to show that battery A has a shorter or less than, smaller mean life. So that leads me to my alternative hypothesis, having a less than symbol. Then I can back up and say, okay, so my null hypothesis must be the complement of that the mean lifetime of battery A would be greater than or equal to the mean life of battery B. Again, just for practice, these could also look like mu sub A minus mu sub B is greater than or equal to 0, or mu sub A minus mu sub B is less than 0. Okay, so now we've practiced writing our null and alternate hypotheses. The next thing we want to look at is how do we draw our conclusions for these two sample tests? And the nice thing here is that ultimately we use the exact same procedure for reaching our conclusions in the two sample tests as we do in the one sample tests. You ultimately are comparing that p-value to alpha. If p comes out less than alpha, we are surprised, we reject the null, we can conclude that there is enough evidence to support the alternate claim. And then if p comes out greater than alpha, that is when we fail to reject the null hypothesis and we conclude that there is not enough evidence to support the alternate claim. And then we follow that up by the meaning in context. And so again, just a reminder of my kind of silly ways to remember what you do when is that if the p is low, the null must go, or a smaller p leads to a shorter sentence, where that's where we simply reject, and the larger p leads to a longer sentence, which is we fail to reject.